Welcome to MilSpouse Transition Conversations. I'm Anna Larson, a military spouse transition expert and your host for today's conversation. Today we're diving into combat-related special compensation, or CRSC, and its impact on military divorce. Because if you've ever found yourself wondering, wait, why doesn't this count as retirement pay? Or how does this affect my financial future? You are not alone. CRSC is a tax-free benefit for veterans with combat-related disabilities, but it's also one of the trickiest topics in a military divorce. Unlike regular retirement pay, CRSC cannot be divided as marital property, leaving some military spouses blindsided during the process. This episode is real talk for military spouses who've been there, sharing what they wish they'd known before starting the divorce process. Now, we do want to mention this disclaimer. This episode is not legal advice. We're military spouses supporting other military spouses and sharing personal experiences to help you make informed decisions. Always consult a qualified attorney for legal guidance. We are excited to have you here today. I have two guests that are going to be here with me. Annette Whittenberger, who is our divorce mentor at MilSpouse Transition, and Liz Davis. I'm going to bring both of them up to say hi, and we're going to get this conversation started. Hi, Annette. Hi, Liz. It's so good to have both of you on here today. I want to get started and just ask the two of you to introduce yourselves. Annette, why don't we start with you? If you could share who you are and what you're doing here today.
Sure. So I am a retired Army veteran. I retired in 2016 and a military spouse of 26 years. I felt that this topic is taboo, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. So it's very important for me to share my experiences in order to help other people.
Thank you, Annette. And Liz, what about you? Do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I was a military spouse for over 20 years. I went through an almost 2-year-long divorce, and I'm a financial advisor. So I do know some of the ins and outs about navigating some of the trickier military stuff when it comes to divorce.
Which is going to be very helpful in today's conversation. So let's start off with our very first question, which is, what is combat-related specialty compensation? Liz, I'm going to softball this one right at you to answer. How do you feel about that?
That is fine. CRSC is when a veteran, you have to be retired, and you have to have at least a disability rating of 10%. The veteran gets that disability rating attributed to combat, whether it was an injury or an illness in combat or preparing for combat. So it could be through exercise as well. And if that is approved, then that correlates to part of his pension that is allocated as combat related. And when that happens, it is not divisible. It is a tax-free benefit. It is not divisible when going through divorce.
I want to throw this up on the stage. This came directly from DFAS. This is their definition of what CRSC is. Combat-related special compensation is a program created for disability and non-disability military retirees with combat-related disabilities. It is a tax-free entitlement that you will be paid each month along with any retired pay you may already be receiving, okay? But there's a lot of ins and outs that comes with this benefit to veterans, and especially when it comes to divorce. I am going to be dropping this link in all the show notes. So if you want to learn more about the legalities in that DOD and DFAS's version of CRSC, please visit this link to really get those ins and outs and the most current information about CRSC. Okay, so why are we talking about CRSC today? Why is it important to understand it when going through a military divorce? And Liz, you touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to throw Annette in the hot seat and I'm going to make Annette answer this question.
So why is it important? Because I recently just learned about it. I went through a year-long battle of the divorce process, and I did not really understand the whole CRSC process. I have a JAG attorney and a civilian attorney. And so I have had that difficult conversation with both of them to figure out how is this going to affect. And it's one person says this, one says the other, but there still is a way to protect yourself. And that's what I'm trying to do. There's a lot of spouses who don't know about that. And there's a lot of attorneys who don't talk about that. It isn't until you say, hey, what's CRSC? What's CRDP? And they're like, oh, yeah. And that's when you get frustrated because you're thinking they should know, but they don't know. You have to actually do the research to bring up that topic, bring up that question to figure out how is this going to affect the pay? And yeah, that's why I have a JAG attorney as well.
Summarizing what the two of you have both said is there's a certain amount of money that's being looked at for the division of assets in your divorce. And CRSC and CRDP, actually, which is not part of our conversation today, but we should definitely bring that up as well. Those two will have an effect on the amount of money that's being considered in that division of assets. Liz, you're the financial advisor here. Give us the lowdown of what we're actually talking about here.
I think the easiest way to understand it is when you go through a divorce and you get a divorce decree, there is an agreement on how the pension is divided. So if there's a pension, a lot of times there is a formula that is used. The DOD has it. A lot of times service members agree just to a 50-50 split. That's an agreement as well. The point is that the judge can say, yes, it's a 50-50 split, or it's big at 43.5%, but then that all goes back to DFAT and they enter it one time. So whatever your one time is, they're like, okay, she got awarded 50% of the pension. That's easy enough. It is, except then a soldier can go back, a veteran can go back and say, I have this disability rating of 60%. And I think the conditions because of this disability were combat related, or I was training for combat. So if they can get those allocated as combat related, it turns into that part of their pension is now tax-free and not divisible. Anything that gets allocated towards combat, tax-free, not divisible. So when that gets into the equation, DFAS doesn't say, oh, your ex-spouse is supposed to get 50% of your pension. They just automatically take that out. So if they were awarded, oh, you had 60% disability. Yeah, we think all of that's because of combat. The actual pension amount gets reduced drastically because taxable pension is divisible, but that CRSC pension is not divisible. So you could think that you're having $2,500 a month come into you forever, and all of a sudden that payment could be $600 because of the way they filed for CRSC.
My understanding is that this is not something the service member has to talk with you about. This is literally something they can do at any point after your divorce decree has already been settled and said and done, and then it just gets applied to whatever your next payment might be according to your divorce documentation, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So talk to me about this as military spouses. What does this mean? The message we're trying to send out today is what?
I think the message is that it's just something to always be aware of. I think it means you have to be a little bit more aware when you're talking to lawyers, talk to your friends. A lot of people are going through this transition time. It's pretty common to go through a divorce and this type of stuff pops up. But I think the biggest thing is just that this is an entitlement and that the spouses have earned it as well, and not to feel that you are waiting for something that isn't for it.
Would you add to that, Annette, based on your experience?
I do agree with Liz. And I also want to say that, like I had mentioned before, it's not one of those things that's brought up. It's almost like you have to research it to know what to ask. There's no toolkit out there that says, ask all these questions, because over the year, I've talked to friends that have been through a divorce. I have talked to friends who knew of somebody who's been through a divorce, and they brought out these things to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I didn't know, because no one is willingly giving you that information. And my ex-spouse certainly wasn't going to tell me, hey, look for these things. You're on your own and you have to figure things out, but not everybody knows what questions to ask. So if I wouldn't have spoken to these individuals, I would not have known. And that's frustrating to me, because I was in the military and I usually good about researching, but gosh, I was like, I didn't know about this. These are entitlements that you're entitled to. These are things that you have to look for. And it's just unfortunate And I think that's why I'm so passionate about what we're doing here, is because we want to be able to help these individuals know what to do and to feel empowered with these questions. Go, no, I want to know about this, and not just go off of what the attorneys tell you, because they're only going to tell you so much.
And I think the part that we don't think about is this could happen any time after a decree is already signed and sealed and delivered. So you're now anticipating, expecting, counting on making financial decisions based on what you think is going to be compensation provided during a divorce decree. And this could drastically reduce the amount that you see coming to you through that divorce decree. And there's not really any way for you to fight it once everything is said and done and sealed by the judge. And so this is one of those things you have to know about in advance in order to make sure that you consider it and have language written in, whatever that looks like, into your paperwork.
I've had lengthy conversations with my JAG attorney because I told her my fear. I'm absolutely afraid of what can happen afterwards. And so I'm not sure how many people have done this or how it stands, but she did provide me verbiage to use. And I asked her, are you sure this is going to protect me? She says, this is what you need to say. But like you said, things can change afterwards. They can decide to do something else. But I think that's why it's so important to ask those questions and say, what can I do? Tell me what to put in here. What is the chance? Just all the questions. You have to ask it. And I think that's why I feel so strongly about obtaining both attorneys, so you can get the entitlement piece from military law, but also from civilian, obviously, because they can't represent you.
What are the kinds of questions that you should be asking your attorney when it comes to this topic in particular?
I think just in general, like, how many military divorces have you handled? How many divorces of military veterans have you handled? And then our favorite thing in the world are all those acronyms. So if you start saying CRSC and SBP and Form 2214, like, if they're familiar with it, they'll know what you're talking about. You have to have a lawyer who understands, or at least knows, where to do the research, what it would entail. And then as far as putting verbiage in like a divorce contract, a divorce decree, it's usually around the part where you're actually talking about the pension. There's a part in your divorce agreement, settlement decree, that talks about the pension, how it's split up. And then after, that's usually where a lawyer will insert, in the case that the service member or veteran goes after CRSC. And then there's like legal verbiage of how you explain it. But basically the breakdown is whatever the full pension amount before allocating anything as pre-tax for the veteran, the spouse will always be entitled to that amount. So there's a lot better way to finesse that. I don't have the legal words in front of me, but it basically is saying, even if they reallocate everything,
right,
not related special pay, that the spouse will receive her original entitlement.
You're right.
Percentage entitlement that she was granted.
It protects the spouse then against these changes happening after the fact and losing that benefit that they were provided in the divorce contract, and essentially creating what I would consider to be a great deal of havoc in their financial world.
They can't go after it. Yeah. No way to say, because they'll say the pension is being divided, how it was awarded, because the pensioner.
And that's what we have to remind spouses, is to ask for that verbiage, because like you said, if it's not in there, it doesn't count. But not everybody knows that. They're just going off of, this is what my attorney said. I know, but they don't always know everything. So it's almost like we have to educate them and say, this is what I need to be put in there. And this is why I'm not going to do this and this. But yeah, we have to tell them that this is what you need to ask for.
Yeah. And I think it's really detrimental in states where there is an alimony. I'm in a state where there is an alimony.
Yeah, me too.
If I had that pension taken away, if it got reallocated as combat related and I was just getting a couple $100, every state is different. But even though every state is different, you have to start at the same point when it comes to gathering the information and asking your lawyer certain questions to protect yourself, for sure.
One of the things that you said that really kind of stuck in my mind is every state is different. And so you really do have to know, based on the state that you're doing the divorce in, that you have to know what the applicable rules are in that state specifically. because you may not have any recourse. In one state, you might, in another, which is why we say this is not legal advice here, right? You have to talk to a lawyer and you have to make sure your lawyer understands the legalities in that state and what options you do have. Thank you so much for bringing this to the attention of military spouses who may be going through this challenging time of a divorce. What would be your piece of advice that you would leave with a military spouse that is maybe out there listening in our audience today? Who wants to go first? I'll let you decide amongst yourselves.
You want to go for it, Annette?
Sure. I would say not to be afraid to ask the questions. I actually spoke to a handful of attorneys that offered free consultations to ask their opinion. And it could be scary to just stick with one. But even after I already had my current one, I still went out and asked questions. I wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing, or I was asking the right thing, and that they understood the law. And then, the JAG attorney, if it's offered to you, take it. Go ask for it. Go ask for it and see if they can assist you. Although they can't represent you, they can assist you, and they look over your divorce decree. They answer the questions that they can answer. They will give you advice that they are allowed to give. Just don't be afraid to ask, because this is a lot. It's a lot, and it's the rest of your life, and it's a very emotional time, but you want to make sure that you are going in empowered and with questions that you want answered without anybody telling you, no, you shouldn't do that. Go ask.
Thank you, Annette. You have to be talking about this. If you're too afraid to even ask the questions, then in the end, you cannot move forward confidently, knowing that you've done whatever you could for yourself. So thank you. Liz, what word of advice would you leave?
I think I would say stay empowered. Don't feel discouraged. It is an entitlement that you deserve. You have earned it. The other thing I would say is don't be quick to settle. I think a lot of times there might be an offer. I will give you $50,000 from this asset if you don't go after my pension. Do the math, consult with somebody, consult with a financial advisor. My lawyer likes to tease that lawyers are terrible at math, because I'll always say, what is that? Let's crunch the numbers. And we're not good at math. So I would say that, because to take $50,000 up front, is that a good deal compared to $2,500 paid over how many years? You have to do, what is that worth in the future? What is the cost of taking that now? There's a lot of questions to answer. Don't be so quick to say, he's being nice and offering me this lump sum, so I just will say, it's fine, I don't need any of your pension. And that's a really big thing to walk away from. Like, you have to be very sure about that. And it's worth talking to somebody who can crunch the numbers for you, or who at least you can talk it through. You have to see like what works best for you.
We military spouses were such a community that we often are like sisters. Cousins said that it was like this. So take it at face value. Sometimes that's the way it's going to work for me. And we just have to remember that's not always the case. Crunch the numbers, know the answers, ask the questions. Every journey is so unique to that military spouse, that veteran, the family, and they may not even be a veteran. They may still remain in active duty, right? You may be a military spouse leaving active duty military life, but your ex is staying in. So this isn't always a transition of retirement or transitioning out completely as an entire family. This may just be a transition for you specifically and any children that are going to be involved in it. So thank you, Liz and Annette, for those words of advice. I think that more than anything, I think is going to help a military spouse out there feel heard and understood, and they get it. Finally, somebody's getting it, and somebody's talking about it, which is another really big thing. So I want to say thank you to both of you for coming on today and being brave and talking about your unique situations and what those lessons learned have been from that. We appreciate it. So as we close out here today, I do just want to say that here at MilSpouse Transitions, we talk about all the different situations that leave a military spouse moving out of that active duty life. And divorce is one of those. And so we are going to continue to bring those conversations to military spouses who are asking questions. So as you navigate that world of questions, drop in here to us. Ask them to myself or Annette or any member of the MilSpouse Transition team. Jump over on our website. We have a space for you to drop questions there. We want to be able to answer the questions that you have. Join our email list. We will be dropping upcoming conversations and events that are happening for spouses that are going through divorce. Come and find us on LinkedIn. I know I'm hanging out there. I know Annette's hanging out there. Liz, where can people find you if they wanted to have a conversation with you?
I'm over there as well. You can find me on there. It's Liz Davis with a little dash finance after it, because there's a lot of Liz Davises out there. But yep, I'm on LinkedIn as well.
I love it. And all of this contact information will be in the show notes. So you can head over to MilSpouseTransition.com and there will be a show notes section there with a blog specifically for this podcast and this show when it airs. Subscribe and follow, and we look forward to having you at our next MilSpouse Transition conversation. Thank you, ladies, for coming, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.